Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show. Bring it!
Let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, for an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their
right.
The right that someone has. All of our rights exist in context.
What is the context of a second medical opinion?
Because you're disrespecting the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem that you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a future, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Hi there. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. Thanks for being with us wherever you are. Good evening, good night, good afternoon, good morning. As you can see from our screen, right in the middle, we have one of Guyana's foremost intellectuals, Ravi Dev. And I don't think Guyana should miss Mr. Dev's analysis of the phenomenal September 1, 2025 election results. So we've invited him in the studio to give us a holistic analysis of the September 1, 2025 elections. I will start with two questions and he can answer the second one after Leonard's intervention. My first question will be his take on the PPP's showing. And my second question will be his take on the PNC showing. But before the second question, Leonard Craig will come in. So let's get rid of the protocol and then we go into that question, hoping that Ravi remembers it, and I'm sure he will. Ravi, thanks for being here once again. You are someone we are grateful for to be on this program whenever we request you. So I think you have been interviewed by Leonard.
Yes, I have.
Surely. Mm-hmm.
Good. So the two questions, I will ask you to keep the second one after Leonard comes with this question. Give us your take on the PPP showing. Three seats, more.
Well,
9,000.
First of all, Freddie, thanks for your kind words and for having me back. In fact, I was wondering how come you didn't give me a buzz, and then you explained to me that somehow you couldn't get on to me.
No, you
I must say, thanks you.
The phone, beep. You gotta get a new phone.
Yeah, coming back to the PPP's performance before the elections, in my article in the Guyana Times, I predicted, that was on the day before elections, the Sunday before elections, I predicted that the PPP would get 36 seats, and they got 36 seats. So I will tell you my rationale for predicting that before they actually got it. There were a number of them. One was basically that while there was talk of their losing some of those seats that they had in the 12th Parliament, I didn't see how that were possible, and primarily because of the refusal of the PNC to practice the logic of the politics that the demographics of Guyana demanded. I've been talking until my face is blue that since 2010, that with the changing demographics, the PNC had to moderate its approach to politics in terms of street protests and all the other actions that gave it a very negative impression in the Indian community. And the PNC under Aubrey Norton while he refused to come out with street protest, I think my good friend David Hines advised that it's useless to seek vote outside of the Afro-Guyanese constituency, and certainly not from the Indo-Guyanese community. And from what happened to several members of the party who were chastised by David Hines and others, and Norton did not reprimand them for doing so to his own party members. People like Mahipal, people like Pandit Obraj Narayan, Peter Chandan Etman. So what happened is that they, from the very beginning, did not, the PNC, and I will just, the PNC did not give itself an opportunity for getting votes in a nation of what I define as a nation of minorities. There is no one ethnic bloc that can deliver a majority to you in Guyana. So I thought basic political logic in a democracy where you have to agglomerate votes, but to say you have to be open, preach it. Nobody knows what's in your mind, but in terms of your action, in terms of your words, in terms of your rhetoric, all of that should say, you know what, we're a party that's open to everybody. And yet, outstanding members, including David Hines, who Aubrey refused to in any way reprimand. In fact, when he sent him to Parliament, said this was an intelligent person. I don't think David exhibited much intelligence in the kind of advice he gave to the PNC, nor the kind of abuse he poured out on many individuals in the Indo-Guyanese community. And I think for that reason, therefore, at the very minimum, the PPP would have held on to its base. That's number one. Number two, from learning its lessons in 2015, the PPP for the first time explicitly abandoned the Marxist-Leninist cant that refused to acknowledge the salience of ethnicity and acknowledge, first of all, they jettisoned it completely, and then overtly now said, we are going after Afro-Guyanese votes. They used the A word. They had always refused to do that. Through the 30 years I've been back in Guyana Plus, I've got to acknowledge the ethnic element. They did so, and they went out. They not only recruited individuals, they went out group-wise, and I was very unwise in numbers in proportion to their numbers from their developmental thrust. Individuals like PM Phillips, when he early on showed that Afro-Guyanese were getting even more than their share. They were getting 48% of, let's say, house lots. And we could see in every other sector that Afro-Guyanese were participating. So that was the second reason. And the third reason, and I think we must be very understanding of this, and I would like us to expand on it later. Politics has waves, and those waves are determined by the circumstances, the macro circumstances. And what we have experienced after the 60s and into the 70s is now the growth of populist politics. In the post-war era, we had ideology driving politics. So you had to show your knowledge of Marx and Lenin, and Burnham and Jagan argued who was a Menshevik and who was a Bolshevik. Populism simply divides the world into two. Us against them. Us against them. And while the PPP always said it was for the working class, the PPP now had made that real to show that when they spoke of us, it was all groups. And I thought that the One Guyana formulation by President Irfan Ali, when it was adumbrated, explained that while we could be multicultural, multi-religious, ultimately we are talking of being citizens of this land. It is one Guyana where we have equal rights to all that the Guyanese state can bestow. And I think for those three reasons, and of course, just to close it off, we'll talk about the same politics played by Win, by Azruddin in office to gain his seats. But Irfan Ali is the consummate populist leader by inclination in terms of how he relates with people. He doesn't divide. He's called an inclusive. His approach is called an inclusive populist approach, where everybody is part of it. Even if you're not voting for him, you're part of a one Guyana. But the essence of populism also goes back to how do you relate to the common people. The old doctor politics that Lloyd Best said we practice, you had to be a doctor this and a doctor that, is gone. That was a post-World War II phenomenon. This new politics is that the common person got to see you as a person who not only they would like to sit down and play dominoes with, but who you are willing to play dominoes with. And that is President Ali's nature. I knew him since he was a young man on West Coast, and that's how he is, to play bat and ball, to play dominoes, to open up a little dance on the dance floor at the Indian wedding house, bottom house. So for those three reasons, I think the PPP was guaranteed an increase, and I gave the number of 36, and it came out to 36, right? I will not pretend that there was any poll or anything behind it. That was my guesstimate based on my factors, and it happened to be true.
You refer to the populism of the president. When he just started, he appeared to be what one could determine a bit awkward, politically and otherwise. Do you think that helped him in any way, that people look at him and say, oh, this is a man like me, makes mistakes, what have you, and then we saw him grow before our very eyes and become a growing stature, political stature, that is. Do you think that helped him?
Well, you use the word awkward, which is, a word
politically,
But I never saw it like that.
Okay.
Like I said, I saw Irfan, even as a young kid, when the PPP picketed my home at De Willem. Irfan was there. I still have him on tape, waving a PPP flag in front of my house. He was 20 years old or less. So I know him there. He's from Leonard. I'm from Iflak. Knew his dad, his mom, and all that. So I don't think it was awkwardness. I have seen Irfan give talks long before he became president, where he was tremendously eloquent and could do so. It's just that who he was defined as awkward, and I hope you're not part of that, by that what Freddie calls the colored elite in this country.
Okay.
What has happened is that in Guyana, proper behavior was defined by a certain set of people in this country. And so for Irfan Ali to be, as we say, sanéing 7 curry and eating it from a leaf would be considered very gauche. Or to come and hug Mia Motley, throwing all kind of, the trappings of office as defined into the garbage. They might have seen it as awkward, but it was not. It was part of his whole approach, where I wrote publicly to give him credit, because that also empowered a lot of people like myself, who still sane their food, who, when he went to Indians to do A-levels back in the early 70s, was still ashamed for taking out his roti wrapped around aloo choka. You understand? It wasn't done. And that went on as far as when my kids went to Queens in the 2000s.
Right.
So it is that behavior which he appears to be awkward, but he was not awkward.
You appropriately defined it, and that is how I see it. But the question, the main question is, do you think that helped him in getting in touch with people?
Definitely. People could see from the beginning this guy was real. And if he's willing to go at the level of relating to me. I've never forgotten why he went somewhere in the interior. I think it was maybe Linden, and he was playing dominoes. You know, now that's a very, very, epigraphic gesture in the countryside. You sit down and you have a pack of graham and you knock on your ticket, as we call it, onto the table and so on and so forth, right? So I think people then could relate to that and extend that, and that's what populism is all about.
Right.
But what is different from Irfan's populism as opposed to other, which we will talk about, who will just use the approach, is that Irfan also comes from a party, which by its own definition has defined what is populism and had altered it to now consciously target all groups in Guyana. So the two had to have jived, and the young people say jive, that's my generation, if it jived, if it meshed.
I am not too sure if some of the ideologues in the PNC and in the PPP and intellectual may be comfortable with defining him as a populist, because there is a worldwide trend in populism that panders to basic instincts. Hungary, Italy.
Well, that is why, and I think we need to really, and the PPP and their ideologues need to consciously understand populism in both its inclusive and its exclusivist manifestations. In the exclusivist one, as we see playing out in America, right? We don't know that much about Hungary, another Slavic country just elected a populist fellow.
Czech Republic.
The Czech Republic, right? And you have that. So what I'm saying is that populism has its inclusive aspect, where everybody, the nation, not the tribe. And this is where Irfan Ali's populism applies to everybody. So to whether he would do Michael Jackson moonwalk, for which he was derided, right? Or to do, the Indian twirly dances. I was mocked when I was a young boy for dancing. You do the hand movement. It means he is going in to the psyches of all Guyanese. And if the other PPP membership don't appreciate that, then they will cause the party dearly going forward. Because as we know, Freddie, there are waves of, the geist of the age, right? And it's not something that we can stop. It's there. It's how we utilize it. It's how we blend it. And right now, that populist wave is not going to be put back into any bottle like a genie. We're gone. Especially, you see, and this is where, your friend Marx said that, man makes their history, but not in circumstances of their making. So first, for you to function in politics, much less succeed in politics, you first have to understand the circumstances under which you operate. And this populist wave will play out, and it is men like Irfan Ali and others who can play a role, even now that we have world attention, that populism doesn't have to divide the world in a negative way of us against them. His us can include everybody. Everybody.
Well, the second
I want my water, Freddie. You normally give me water when I come in here, boy.
You didn't bring your water?
Give me water.
Your wife is in the studio. She has any
Yes.
Robert, can you hear me?
My wife will get it for me.
Can we have okay.
Oh, sorry.
You want her to get some water for
Yes.
you? I forgot my water outside, but I'll manage. Well, the second question when I started...
You just ask me this question, give me long answers.
The second question is about the PNC. You cannot tell me, despite your intellectual ability, you cannot tell me that you expected them to have
No.
to 1 to 12?
Well, that is where I get to go. So let me finish off with my projection the day before elections. I said PPP 36, and I said Azruddin 5, and PNC, I think was at 30-41. I think it's 14. I think something like that. I gave them more. 22. I think I gave them.
22.
But yeah, they were going to come down.
They get 10 less than what you give
But
them.
not as precipitously as. And that is where we have to look at, again, their misreading of the circumstances in which the new politics is being played out. And this is where I think that David Hines has played the most, and again, he's my friend. For 2 decades, we would pretty much, exchange ideas and hang out. That David Hines has played the most pernicious role in destroying the PNC. I don't think deliberately so, but he has done so, which is that David preaches a politics that comes out of the ideological battles of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, of course. He's a man of the past. Yeah.
And he keeps on, as we say in the Indian community, goateeing it again and again and again. And it doesn't bring you forward. Goateeing mixes what you have, but doesn't create anything new. So for David to insist that the Afro-Guyanese community is still stuck in the politics, in the post-World War II politics, was an insult to Afro-Guyanese. That politics at that time, the African Guyanese community had been consciously discriminated against, had been put down, beaten down, right? And they needed some kind of new thinking in how to deal with this new economic paradigm that had swept the world. With the defeat of the socialist threat, right? And with the victory of capitalism, you have to now operate in that world. The African Guyanese have never been pushed by their leadership towards success in that capitalist world. So if you keep on focusing on a victim mentality, which comes out of slavery, which is there, is nothing, it's all true. But the impact of it, we have to rise above it. In the present capitalist dispensation, you're not going to Guyana alone, unlike what Forbes and Chetty thought, they couldn't change that. It was, a force of nature almost. So to come back to it, David Hines, unlike the PPP that jettisoned capitalism, socialism and capitalism from his mantra, David Hines played the role of the ideologue within the PNC to keep them in an era that has long gone. Therefore, all of the African Guyanese who saw the opportunities that were out there due to the new oil fuel economy, they grasped it on their own. Not a single one of them grasped it because the party guided them. Because if you're still going to talk,
James Bond grasped it on his own.
on his own. James did it on his own.
Bond said, listen, there was space here for black entrepreneurship, and I'm going for it.
Right, and in this new thing, the cooperative model doesn't work. At one time, it may work because, again, right, Ujamaa socialism in Africa, that African thing and all that. But we got to know when to move on, right? Kenny Ross said you got to know when to hold it, but you got to know when to fold it also. And the PNC, again, under the ideological persuasion of David Hines and company, led them down a road that they couldn't go. Therefore, the Afro-Guyanese have freed themselves, a lot of them have freed themselves from the, the auspices of the PNC. And so come September 1st, I gave, even 5 seats that I gave, that I felt Win would get was a lot. Nobody felt he could get that because by the old criteria of David and emphasizing he's an educated man, he knows all these fancy words The people out there don't give any credence to that anymore. They don't. It's an old game.
Yeah, I don't think young Africans listen to David work.
But and if they do, they are scoffing of it because they know by their own experience.
They have no respect for Tukumu.
By their own experience, they know by their own experience that there's a new world out there that they'll be left out of if they go down that route. And that is why, and that also, and we can hopefully will get to win. And how they did.
How they won.
How they won. Big time. I'll tell you a story on that. I was going to New York, going up for my normal medical checkups and all that.
What happened to Balwan Singh Hospital? Anyway, go ahead.
No, the thing is, over there, all my work has been done over there since I was a young man.
I'm joking.
And, I have some serious medical issues. So,
but you're all right now. Tell our viewers, you're all right now.
Cancer, you're never fully ordered with cancer. You have to always be on your guard. So I've revealed it to the people out there. I'm all right for now, but every 6 months you got to check it up. Anyhow, so to come back to it, I was stuck in the airport for 8 hours. There was some flight. I always travel Caribbean Airlines, so there was a delay for some reason for 8 hours, and I was stuck with a fellow who used to be part of ROAR, a guy named Ramaya from Berbice.
Dr. Ramaya
he
went over to win. And then he lost.
But the point is that I sat with this man, and this man opened up my eyes to the effect that Win had in the Indo-Guyanese community. Because Ramaya could only talk, authoritatively of what he saw at the village level. Because I said, man, are you the one who you go out and you tell these people to come out to the meetings? And he said, no, Ravi. That basically, when people hear the fellow is coming down, they come out. And so and this is something the PPP should not ignore, that there was a certain amount of protest votes by Indo-Guyanese who either stayed at home or voted for Win. For example,
Win got 12,000 votes in Region 2, 3, and 6.
But take, for example, my village. It's a small section that everybody, right? And in Eiflet, the part I live in called Eiflet Ocean View, he got 17 votes. I'm still wondering who are these 17 people out of 107. There's 10%. Over in Zeeburg, a very small section, 100% Indian, he got 43 votes. So the point is, if you put this here, there, and I'm not even talking of Berbice, whereas Ramaya explained, because the developmental thrust had not reached there yet, right? I mean, sending him to cut cane at Portman, at Kanji, Rosal didn't do much. So come back to the thing. He said these people were coming out to listen, and he predicted to me that they were going to have over 20 seats. I thought, man, you're a mad doc, you're a mad man. But then afterwards I had to you can't disregard evidence, empirical evidence. So I started thinking, talking to people, understanding people, and I saw that under this new dispensation, people are not saying that he went to school or didn't go to school, and those were never questioned, because I started asking people around me when I go about doing my own little, walkabouts. And those were not issues that came as when I was a boy, when all of us admired Rupert, for the way he could articulate, or Rodney and all the rest of them. They didn't mention that. All he did, he treated himself as he was one of them. He goes, our people aren't normally articulate in terms of policies. All they want to know, man, you're going to build a road or you're going to give him money and all that. Basic things. And he played that, whether consciously or unconsciously. I don't know, because I'm sure they've hired good experts. They have the money to hire the top experts. So maybe they read this populist wave. I don't know. I've never spoken to anybody on that side beyond Ramaya that one night.
Leonard?
Staying on Win since we entered that tunnel. Unexpectedly, Win got 14 seats and so on.
Unexpectedly, Win won 16 seats.
16, is it?
Yeah, 16.
Right, 16. Right. What other phenomena you think was responsible other than Azruddin and his personality? You mentioned earlier that you think he benefited from some of what President Ali himself portrayed. Can you summarize the Azruddin phenomenon that we witnessed?
Well, two things. One, firstly, the PPP. With all that the PPP did, with all that they were doing, and the promises as to what they will do, there would still be, as with all incumbents, right? A feeling among some that they have not done enough because they personally were not affected. So while the cash grant may have benefited all because some of them were to every Guyanese, there were other programs that benefited some. The individual who did not benefit from those programs wouldn't blame themselves for not necessarily stretching out and doing what was necessary. All they know is that the fella down the block got this and got that, this year's gutting, and they're moving ahead. And if it's one rule of sociology that ain't gonna go away, is the law of social comparison. By definition, due to our genetic makeup, we size up people when we met them, whether they're going to bop us over the head with their, as cavemen, or whether they were going to be friendly. So that is built into our literal DNA, literal DNA, as to size up individuals when you encounter them. Now it's a little more, how would I put it, a little more open. In terms of the criteria you use. But for now, when we are developing economically, because some people would not have benefited as yet, the PPP would say, still those people will still make their judgment based on where they stand. That's inevitable. And I saw that in Barbies, and I saw that when I went to certain areas. I met some of my old friends who were hardcore PPP, that they would say, man, so and so did well. They got a contracted job. They doing that, and so there was always that. So you would always have some, any incumbent, who would feel that the party should have given them personally more benefits. The other one, of course, would be that in the past, the PNC on the Granger had done the logical thing of forming an alliance with an Indo group, and therefore that provided a home where these disaffected individuals from the PPP felt safe. So we saw that playing out in 2011 and 2015. It played out where they got a significant block, the number 11,000, I think, is tossed around, that Moses would have brought along with him.
That was from Region 6 alone.
So, but based on how Granger treated them, right? The people who, while Moses might have been very satisfied with all the outriders he got when he tooled around, around Georgetown, that didn't help anybody out in Barbies, much less Wim village where he came from. So that's why Wim itself, right?
He got whipped.
He got whimmed, right? So the thing is that there is that playing out. So the PNC again destroyed an opportunity for widening its base into a more populist direction by shabbily throwing the AFC to the curb and kicking them in the teeth. And again, and it shows you, and I'm explaining also why the AFC lost big time, that in kicking them in the teeth, coming back to what Sharon Das said, by kicking them in the teeth, the average supporter who gave them their vote would have said, man, at least you would speak up. And they didn't. Kemra didn't speak up, Moses didn't speak up. So for that constituency, they lost. And that there again, the PPP would have done their darnest to try to get that back. So that is the second thing that played out there.
Okay, so you think, based on what you just described, Win piggyback on some of that to gain the 16 seats that
Well, very much so, because what it did, the face that a coalition would have presented to some Indians to cross over, and to some blacks who were not satisfied with the PNC's approach, Win now gave them a home. Because Win's approach, from the very beginning, he didn't have the historical baggage of the PPP, if we may call it so, to have played ethnic politics. I know to my personal satisfaction that Dr. Jagan, in all my interactions with him, was very, very much anti-racial politics, but yet, because of the nature of Ghanaian politics, whatever he did was seen through those lenses. Win didn't come with that baggage. So he was a new fella who, when he went out on his outreaches, played the same game to everybody, right? And we saw him make hay out on over my side of the river with the Adriana Young's tragedy, right? He made hay.
He was a financial man behind the scene.
Right, he was that. And I knew from the very beginning, because people on the ground were telling me, he funded the bus that took those people in front of Leonard Station, that blocked the roads, and made Shine Rice, not Coca Price, Shine Rice, in front of Leonard Station. You know it's Shine Rice, Freddie? You don't know it's Shine Rice.
Yeah. I'm so George, I know so much Shine Rice.
Yeah. Anyhow, so
if you're from the countryside, then you know Shine Rice.
Boy, I come from
so George.
Shine Rice is a country thing, but
it's a country thing. You're making joke about.
I know what Shine Rice is.
I come from Cashwell, I thought Cashwell we have that was founded in 1841, my buddy. Anyhow, yeah, go on. So all of these factors played out where he could then seal both camps. So I think he played a bigger role to give these new African voters an opportunity that, you know what, I can't bring myself to vote for PPP, right? Because David and others have still made Jagdev to be,
the evil person. Yeah.
Mephistopheles, what was the film?
Mephistopheles,
yeah. So, but they've now got at least place it on Azruddin's wins.
So, do you think there is merit in the David Hines theory that Africans didn't give PPP their vote? It's just another African party led by an Indian man.
Well, see, that is where the kind of semantical contortions
But put
that
a
are
stronger
made,
word.
then
Asininity
you would
of David Hines.
then boy, you and he's more friend than me, so I can stay out of that. So no,
Threaten to sue me.
you can't have those contortions. You have to deal with this new world. It's a new world. I learn every day from my two kids, right? Who are functioning in that world. They're in their 20s and they're functioning in this new world. And the vocabulary they use, right? The way they see life, their friends that they have is not of my generation. So when we talk of us becoming a one Guyana, I can see it happening slowly but surely. And if the PPP now in this next 5 years could bring the same kind of equity in development that it has done racially, if they could now do that regionally, and I'm talking of both Berbice and Essequibo Coast, that still needs to be brought on.
Yeah.
And I see, to their credit, they're talking of the new gas line will go there, and that will fuel a host of new industries. And I hope they focus on it, because when people are divided, they will again allocate themselves into some category. So the racial category is being broken down, but the regional category is still one where, to our shame, that nothing really has changed in terms of interior people. And we got to talk very frankly, as Freddie is the only person in Guyana who talks about openly. It's not only a matter of economics. It's a matter of how your human worth is being evaluated. So coming back to why AFC lost and lost big time. And those elements within the PNC now have to be gone. That kind of snobbery true to that colored class has to go. They don't find Afro-Guyanese don't find a home. There was that home there when I and Freddie were boys, when all of the shop girls in Booker's used to be, fair-skinned people there. And you had that class. Even
the bank tellers.
In the shop.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Even going low in the shop girls when you go into Booker stores in those days.
You call them red people. Yeah,
right. So the thing is, though, that what that new group will not listen to that. Burnham himself played a great role, because when Burnham went to Queens, he spoke very frankly of being teased and, as we say, tantalized at Queens by those who were fairer. And that is why when he became president, he took all of them from that class who were in the civil service and took them to Hope Estate, where he rode around on his horse, his high horse, and they had to jump in trench when they saw him. He would laugh. I have friends who spoke to him, and he would laugh about it. So to come back to it, Freddie, I think the PNC will have to find the soul of Guyana now, and it's a soul that has morphed into a much more inclusive one. And they should take a page out of your Ali's book, where he said after winning that he took time to say it and emphasize it. He will govern for all Guyanese, including those in the opposition.
All of us in and out of Guyana that looked at the PNC the past 2 years before the election was saying they can be devastating. Look, people leaving. And Norton was a runaway train. And he had as his co-pilot David Hines. But what happened to the intellectuals, though they were not in the PNC? It seemed to me that Harmon, Granger, Clive Thomas, they just, either they were mentally paralyzed or they just gave up on the PNC. Nobody tried to stop Norton. Nobody tried to stem the exodus. Even Amna Ali, when she was so abused and then Norton didn't attend the funeral, nobody never said, look, you're going to destroy the PNC. Where were those people?
Well, they were, by the workings of the structural aspects of the PNC, they were put out, because the PNC defines Congress as their highest authority. But the party's constitution says that between Congresses, right, the executive committee is the highest authority. And Norton, being a good old-time PNC graduate, understood that had to be stacked and packed to deliver what he wanted. So people were very confused when he brought in all these young boys and girls inside. He knew what he was doing. And all of those names that you mentioned were outside of it. And the WPA insisted on thinking that they had a functioning political party, which they never did. But Aubrey went along with it. Now, I had earlier, and I said I felt I knew Aubrey a bit, and Aubrey might be one of those people you think is, an abused child becomes an abusive parent. I'm being honest, because I told you.
No, you get it a bit personal.
No.
You might get sued.
No, I'm telling you.
No, you gotta be careful.
No.
Sue a man for saying I know Aubrey. Go.
No, I'll tell you this. No, let me explain myself.
Could you reword that?
No, I'll explain why. Because as I said on this program before, I spent countless hours talking to Mr. Hoyt, right? He was an individual who I respected, and I felt he respected me, and we talked very frankly. From the crime novels he and I read voraciously, to history, to all the things that he was interested in. And he explained his background. His dad was an urban joiner, you get me? And he was trained to try to aspire to that middle class hood right? In the way he carried himself, in the way he talked. He went to Barbados or Grenada and taught in a boys' school there, went off to London and became a lawyer and came back. And he really strove, because that was the ethos of the age, to try to become middle class. I saw in your article today you talk about dark-skinned one. You could become part of that colored class, even though you were black like me, if you behaved a certain way, if you spoke a certain way, and you were qualified, and lastly, as Andai emphasized in her book, if you married up, meaning you had to marry a a person like that. Those would be the criteria to get you in. So Mr. Hoyt once shared with me that I asked him why you got rid of Aubrey as general secretary when he used the word creature. And he's a creature of my meaning in the word. He could do whatever he want.
Creature of the party.
But it didn't mean any negative sense, just that he could do what he wanted. And he explained to me that he saw Aubrey drinking at some street corner. I now later found it was Bamba, with his shirt out of his pants. And the way Mr. Hoyt, that is not the way to go. That you have to be inclusive. Going forward with the new PNC. But he has repeated it. So in that sense, I would say that he has not learned of that. And in that sense, I am using...
The abuse child thing.
The abuse child.
Politically. Yeah.
Politically.
Okay.
He's been a politically abused child.
By Mr. Hoyt.
Not a sociologically abused
because
child.
he was always... I'll share this anecdote.
Thanks for the clarification.
I'll share this anecdote already. I sat for 5 years with Sheila Holder. One of the nicest human beings that you can meet. Took me to her home in Cursin Park, and we sat in, calf and talked. When they formed a party, she and Freddie Ramjatan came to my home in Iflat and tried to, talk to me and all that. The point is,
tried to enlist you.
They say you can't come in. You're too much of an Indian, but you can advise us on the side. Ask him Raja Sori.
Seriously?
But yes, I'm too divisive, but I can advise them.
No, but do you understand? I'm glad you mentioned that, but do you accept that around that time, that is how
class would have seen Norton? Get me? Those who went along with him going there, they only saw him. They don't see him as he's a bright fellow. Norton is a very bright. When we talk about our age group of academics and all that, Norton is a bright fellow in terms of having that book knowledge.
How do you account for the devastation of one of the creme de la creme of the MCC, the Honorable of the AFC, the Honorable Nigel Hughes?
Well, as I said,
he got less than 4,000. He didn't get a seat.
That's right. He didn't even get the leftover seat. He was beaten by a man over there who called leftover seats.
Yeah, but you were taught that.
Well, I just thought.
We actually thought that he would have, when he took over the AFC, said, "You know who I am?"
No, like I told you, Nigel is my friend, even though he hasn't called me for a month, a year, or what. I still would say Nigel is my friend. But Nigel was caught up in that same thinking by Sheila Holder and others, that class, right? And a good friend of mine who was one of the top judges in this country told me, an Indian-oriented judge, said that the Hughes were the Brahmins of the African community. They were the cream de la cream. He used his own term, because they were there. But the thing is, times have changed. And Nigel didn't see that change. And in fact, to my consternation, Nigel, on a stage with David Hines, adopted this Black Power rhetoric and talked of Indians being newcomers to this table from where the corn is going to be shared. I mean, he recanted, rather than expanding on the base that he had built in his own thing. For example, Nigel has been very helpful to Roar back in the day, of the scene and all that. He was always very open about the aspirations of Indians and what have you. But yet he went back because he was one of those who was bitten by the David Hines bug, I think. Rather simplistically, he went back to think of his politics. He played a politics of the 60s, using also the colored, the colored assumptions of this place in the society.
I recall with Hughes, he made a statement that you consider to be balanced after you had the fires when with the Adriana Young protest around
April 28th.
Yeah, he had a nice even-toned speech. And then apparently he was accosted by the Heinz bug. And then he came back the day after.
Say the square pets must be sympathetic to the square pets.
And so on. And that there just, told me that
he
that
justified
Nigel,
the square pets action, but what they did in April.
That told me he was going down the wrong road.
And that is the greatest tragedy that has been done to Afro-Guyanese and those who, rather than leading those from the underdeveloped elements of this community into positive activity to develop themselves by their own efforts, they have now tried to glorify the nihilism that might have been justified at some point when all doors were closed. Those same individuals know now that things are changing, right? Bob Dylan's song about the times are changing back in the 70s when I was a boy. But in Guyana, 50 years later, the times are changing, and there are enough young Afro-Guyanese, I am convinced now, out there who can give testimony. I'm not a Christian, but there's this term of giving testimony to something. And that within their own communities, that things are happening. So I think that card has been played. Excuse me. And I'm hoping that individuals who still feel like David is now threatened when he goes into parliament, that's the kind of card he will play. How can you contribute to our development if you want to take your platform and show Afro-Guyanese how you can develop literally by setting up businesses? For example, I always felt that they should have helped them set up businesses, show them the ropes or whatever.
What a party did with the money they got over $1 billion in over a 5-year period. I think it's a couple of $100 million.
Hundreds of millions. I don't think it reached $1 billion.
And that is where also.
What they did with that money?
Well, that is where, again, it comes out, and Vincent is also from our generation, and I think he's stuck, in that kind of thinking.
No, let him hear you say that.
No, it is because, and I think Vincent is one of the most intelligent individuals that I have encountered.
Yeah, it's amazing how they, and I've known him all my life.
But unless you can, but think of it. You see, Gramsci. But Gramsci used the term that you can have a hegemony, which restricts your vision. Literally, you can't see those things because it has become naturalized. And you say, man, that's the way things are.
And I think you've seen it in the WPA. People like Clive Thomas.
All of them, they're still stuck. Take, for example, this whole thing about giving out handouts.
Man.
I'll tell you something. I grew up, my parents were the last to come out of the logies of IFLAT. And the logies were there. I still go back and I'm writing the history of my village. Coming out, which part of the logie where I was, it was Letter A, where I'm from. You had Nigger Yard, where the Afros, and they were called. So as Martin called it, I come from Nigger. All those are there. But when you come out of that, I remember as a little boy, you are conditioned not to take handouts. You are conditioned that you got to go to school, you got to do your own thing, you got to develop yourself. And I think what people like David Hines and others, you get me, they don't give enough credence that not because Afro-Guyanese were stymied at one point in their developmental trajectory by the Brits and later. You simply have to now coddle them all the while. I referred David once on the same topic to a paper. I gave him the name of the paper, where the Caribbean blacks who went to New York City outperformed the American blacks 12 times or more in their economic performance. So Crown Heights, for example, right? With Shirley Chisholm and all there, she's of Guyanese parentage and all that. All those big high-rise, where Crown Heights is now, where Hakeem comes from. Those were all developed by West Indians. And what it was shown, a paper was done on it, is to show that unlike the African Americans, who would only talk about all the barriers that are in their way, the West Indians, they're not mad, they knew those barriers, but they worked through those barriers. They would work 3 jobs at what was considered menial jobs. Save, buy that house in Crown Heights, buy that house when I got in 72, buy the house in Flatlands, you understand? And develop themselves. And the African Americans would tease them. There was a show, the Wyland Brothers, Mo in Living Color. They talk about, they used to tease Afro-Ghanaians on that show. More money, more money, more money. That's the only thing they felt Caribbean blacks were talking about, of getting more money, more money. So the point is, this is not a badge of shame anymore. That is this new world economy, whether it is liberal capitalism or neoliberal capitalism, what it is. That is the name of the game that we have to play in. And that means you got to do it by your own efforts. To the extent that the PPP has created all these programs, they are bucking the tide, and we should be thankful to still have goal program, to still have, accelerated promotions in certain area and all that. In fact, they have patterned themselves after the Nordic version of capitalism. And even the Nordic countries, Freddie, nowadays are backtracking because of the wave of what is happening. So to come back to it, I think right now we are at a point where the PNC may very well disappear unless somebody do a serious rethink.
But you're not seeing them. Who's there?
I don't see it.
You're not
That's very
seeing-
sad thing.
There's a man you said is a billionaire on this program. He's now the parliamentary head, Terence Campbell.
Yeah, but
he can't do it.
He has embraced the David Hines failed, to use Mr. Dev's term, the David Hines bug has also bitten him.
There's serious thought, there's serious intellectual thought that this party may even be more diminished after 2030.
Well, we saw this, Freddie, if you go back to Trinidad's history, and Trinidad mirrors us to a great extent, we're a bit ahead of us, that the initial ethnic party in the Indians called the DLP, by Badias Maharaj. Kapil, but the Hindu leader was behind it. Kapil was his nephew. And he was the intellectual, because you had to be a doctor, you see. See, but he was a physicist from London University. He said he never had any interest in politics, but you had to put a man to match Eric with his PhDs. So come back to the point is, you had what is called a cancel and replace. So when Bas Dev, whom I know very well, spent hours and hours talking to old Bas, his ULP, right? Then ULF had to cancel, meaning a complete destruction of that party. And then the new party then embraced Indians, but with a more...
Are you applying that analogy to the PNC?
No, I'm saying that might be the only way. If Aubrey goes on with his thing, somebody has to come through. Bas did, because Bas had that support from the oil field workers, right, coming out of the Black Power movement where the army rebelled against Eric.
No, 1972.
Bas had some support there from Rafi Khan and so on. So, but the point is, Indians then were now taken into a new direction of greater inclusivity. So while he was still tagged later as an Indian party, it never had the stain of the original one, where you were almost absolutely in the Mandirs.
Yeah, because Basdev Pandey did get a lot of Afro
votes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think what will have to happen, so there will have to be someone. I don't know if it will be Terence. I think Terence is a very smart man, and I think he has an opportunity, having been one to come out of Essequibo, to succeed in the world of business in Georgetown.
But he's not the leader of the party.
No, but I'm saying he has an opportunity, because I think there will be a search now, well, inside the party or out, but by the people who might be not so comfortable with Win. Today I heard that it was reported that Win, both Azruddin and his dad have been indicted in a Florida court, so he might be extradited.
There's no point indicting him with 10 charges and you don't ask for his extradition.
Yeah, because that's
not possible.
Right, it wouldn't be based. So what I'm saying is that there'll be a shake-up coming up, And I think out of that shakeup, I'm hoping that we need a strong opposition party, but one that is grounded in the people, populist oriented, but one that is inclusive, that can keep the PPP on its toes. We need that. That is how it was invented.
Minister Wanajil was here and he said, I welcome an opposition. It keeps the government on its toes. And that's a sentiment that is shared philosophically by every human being. You need an opposition.
Well, we'll see what is happening in reality, Freddie, is that sadly, again, going back to our circumstances, Guyanese politics has always been hardball politics. So I mentioned the PPP picketing my home. You get me? And all that. But that's how the politics is. You got to move on and move to the new politics that now can bring in the new voters. And I think for the PNC to hold on to the old way of going about politics will simply doom them. And I'm hoping that people like Terence and others who have seen success, who have experienced success, more importantly, have experienced it. Because unless you have experienced something, you, by my philosophy, don't really know it. But he knows this thing can be done as an African man, as he was, might be colored, but he's African. That's how you were dubbed. His generation was dubbed. So I'm hoping someone like him or somebody out there who feels for Guyana will agglomerate our opposition.
But could it possibly be shame that Norton is bowing out, but he doesn't want to do it right now? So he puts Campbell as a parliamentary leader of the PNC, and then the gradual thing is going to come. Do you think so? Because Norton's time has been spent.
Well, you see, it's something that is very hard. Again, going back to Mr. Hoyt, he told me one thing. He said, Ravi, once you've stepped off that plane and been part of that 18-gun salute, it's very hard to give up. So while Norton might not have gotten the 18-gun salute,
Power.
That's right. That's the point that Mr. Hoyt was making. Mr. Hoyt was a very humble man and a reasoned man. But he admitted that to me, and he said it. I've never forgotten that. And so I think Norton has to show that care for the people who he feels he's part of to become the leader that they need at this juncture. And at this time, sadly, I don't think he is the leader that they need at this juncture.
The operator said we got 3 minutes more to go. It's no point indicting Azruddin and his father in some serious charges, and then you just leave it like that. The next step is the extradition.
Yes.
So this, right. If that happens, do you think Win is a one-man show? That man has spent billions for that 3 months he's been in the election campaign. Money just dropped from the tree as mangoes in a Daisuku estate. What happens then if he goes?
Well,
what's your take?
But I think
When is going to wind up?
I think, again, this is again the danger when everything is focused in one man, one personality, or one woman, that politics has to be always broad-based, especially in Guyana. I think the forces that he has put together is at best tenuous, and as I said, was circumstantial, based on what the people feel they didn't do, and what the PNC did do to drive them. So that I think as the politics plays out, even without Azruddin having to face charges in America, I understand the evidence there, is damning. So he'll be extradited and he'll go there, and then the rest of it, I don't see anybody of consequences there. That is part of the danger. That when Ramaya spoke to me, I said, do you all have a program, anything in writing? Is it down there? Do all of you know who's leading this thing? He said no. So it was simply going with the time.
The operator said our time has come. Yes. I want to end on an unusual note. Your wife is sitting in the studio here, and everybody knows Ravi Dev. But then I'm speaking from my experience, and nobody knows who's Janet Kissoon. Nobody sees her. The woman likes to stay out of the limelight. I'd like to invite your wife to come and let viewers see who she is. Would she come? She's right sitting in there. You want to come and sit? She's saying no. Come and just sit next to Ravi and just say, good evening, viewers.
She would. I know her, and that's her. She's very.
She's like Janet Kissoon.
Yes.
Okay, well, on behalf of that decline of invitation by Mistress Dev, we'll have to part company this evening. As you know, Ravi Dev was our guest. You see in the middle
And
here.
he had to bring his own water.
One at Guyana's arm. We're sorry about that. We're not that rich. Leonard, Craig, and I don't get paid for this thing. But it's always good to have a foremost intellectual analyze the contents of Guyana. And in the coming weeks, we'll have Ravi again. On behalf of our operators and my co-host, Leonard Craig, and the famous